Abigail. What are we talking about today?
Today, we're going to share with our listeners an incredibly awesome, counterintuitive, secret ninja parenting move.
A secret ninja parenting tool? I can't wait. Hi, I'm El Kwan in Hong Kong, and I'm your host of the Hand in Hand podcast. We're a non-profit from San Francisco operating globally, and we decode children's difficult behaviors one parenting challenge at a time.
And I'm Abigail Wald, founder of realtimeparenting.com, and I'm also a certified hand-in-hand parenting instructor. And each week, Elle and I are going to look at a behavior that our kids are exhibiting or questions we have about parenting, stories that come from you, come from us, and take a look at how we can use the hand-in-hand parenting tools in our daily lives.
Okay, so you made a very big claim with that tool, the secret ninja tool. What is this tool?
So this is a tool that Patty Wipfler, who's the founder of Hand in Hand Parenting, calls the vigorous Snuggle. And it's kind of an offshoot of our play listening tool, but it's a very specific use of it. And it's totally counterintuitive and super fun.
You keep saying that. Why is it counterintuitive? Why don't you explain exactly what this is?
Okay, so, usually, what do you do when your child is, off track, right? Let's say your child starts kind of throwing darts at the dog or, starts being a little too rough with their baby sister or starts kind of whining, those kinds of things. When a child starts to go off track, right?
Tell them not to.
Yeah, right? Oftentimes we get serious, right? Or we reprimand or we...
Yeah, the eyebrow raise.
Yeah,
Don't
or
do that. What are you doing?
or stop it, or we want to set that boundary, right?
Yeah.
And we think of setting that boundary as kind of like a slightly harsh, strong boundary. Often,
Yeah, my big one is in the morning. When I'm making coffee, if my little boy comes in. He kind of he likes to whack me on the butt. Yeah. And it's his way of saying, don't make coffee, come and play with me. And I'm often more focused on the coffee. So I'm just, leave me alone right now. I will be in a minute, out of the kitchen. It's that.
Yeah. So what's really cool about the vigorous snuggle is that we actually lean in the opposite direction. So when a child is actually starting to go off track, instead of, sort of getting annoyed or putting that limit in directly or reprimand, instead you meet that behavior with kind of an impish grin and play and a physical kind of play. I had here's an example of it. I had a mom who every time she would take a shower, her 3-year-old son would go into the spice rack and start dumping spices out.
No.
Yeah. And you can imagine, not only was that, really annoying, I'm sure. Honey, why does the pasta sauce taste like cinnamon?
Expensive too. Spices are not cheap.
Yeah, right. On top of the fact that, of course, some of those are not that safe, right? And so it was really stressful for her. And so, she kept getting really frustrated with him and kept setting the boundary. But of course, he would always find the time where he could do it when she was indisposed, in the bathroom or in the shower or, dealing with, something else. And so I suggested two things to her. So one was to actually make time for that spice play during special time, right? Which is that few minutes a day that we allot our kids to do child-led play. So to invite him to take that desire to play with the spices and make that sort of naughty behavior okay in a different setup, in a different kind of time. And then what I suggested that she do was to use this vigorous snuggle. So what that would look like is if she came out of the shower and found him, a kitten in milk, right? To sort of go, oh, do I have a little boy in the spices? Come here. I gotta smell you. Are you all spicy? You know what I do to little boys when I catch them in the spice rack, don't you? I chase after them and then I give them 100 little kisses all over their belly button, right? And, the first time I heard Patty and other hand-in-hand instructors teach this, I was like, what?
Yeah, that sounds like a reward. Like, oh, well done,
Yes.
you've done my spices out everywhere.
Yeah. Wait, I don't think you heard me. I'm mad at my child right now, right?
You're right.
Yeah. I don't think you're understanding. And so it's complicated because while it totally makes sense that we would be frustrated and you wouldn't want to meet that with what feels like a reward, because it does. It feels like a reward, right? It's play, and like I don't want to encourage that behavior. I want to stop that behavior, right? But here's the thing: is like it's kind of that thing of like anything you resist grows. So instead, if the parent can stay really calm and playful, and what I like to do is to use this play listening and come in really warmly, right? With like a big, big old grin on my face and be like, oh my goodness, that kind of energy, right? And a big smile. And then you play some sort of physical game, never tickling, but, could be a chase. It could just be like, I've got to sniff those spices. I'm going to lick all those spices off of you. Something that your child thinks is funny, right? Not something
So
your
it
child
kind of
finds scary.
cancels out the fight about who's right. It's just...
Yes. But really the point is that what you're doing is you're coming in and you're building connection and you're creating warmth with your child and physical play and something that's going to make them giggle. So again, along the lines of that play listen. And then what I like to do is once I've got that really nice connection, so once we're now connected and I wait a little bit until I know that the child is now giggling and we're having fun and we're on the same team. And at that point I go, hey, buddy, seriously, I really don't want you to play with the spices. But if you want me to catch you doing something and give you 100 little kisses all over your belly button, what I really don't like is when you untie mommy's apron while she's cooking, And I give them like something naughty to do, that...
With enough of a kind of... risk factor.
Yes, exactly. Like something that feels naughty. So like if you want this play listening behavior again, like I give them a route to get there that's kind of naughty, but something I'm okay with.
I was going to say, well, whatever the connection, wouldn't they do it again? I mean, if they loved the belly buttons, then wouldn't they spill the spice just to do that?
Yes, and they do sometimes in the beginning. Right? But once you build up enough trust and rapport, then you can say, hey, listen, I love playing this game. And there are plenty of naughty things you do that I love to catch you for, right? To celebrate naughtiness in a way, right? Because I think it's fun to be naughty. Like it is actually fun.
I guess it's part of a child's work, isn't it? You're finding out what's allowed, what's not.
Yeah.
And you're right, it is fun. It's fun for us, take an extra half an hour for lunch when we're not doing
exactly, right? So I like to sort of say, hey, listen, if you like this game, like let's play it in this other naughty way that I'm
set up
okay with.
A decent framework that works for both of you kind of thing.
Yes, and you act like you'd be horrified about that. Like to make sure it still feels naughty, right?
Yeah.
And that sort of 1-2 punch, so to speak, of like really greeting the actual behavior you don't want with complete joy and abandon and a physical game, and then actually redirecting it towards something else, really tends to work beautifitly, I find.
Yeah, I've done this a little bit with my littlest one because he's a big fan of... Oh, he uses the washing machine, the round bit in the middle as his stool. And then he'll climb to the counter and he'll open the cover where the cookies are. So often I'll find him mid-climb and he'll climb up there and I'll catch him. But what I normally do is scoop him and spin him. And I call him the little cookie catcher.
I love it.
We spin off. But I have to say, I haven't set up a different way. And I think that's a genius idea. I haven't kind of closed, given that final, I'm not happy about you taking the cookies, and then set up, kind of redirected it in a different way. I really like that idea. But does it work with all ages? Like, I found definitely with my younger ones, I get like a lot of laughter.
Yeah.
How about with the older kids?
My older son is almost, he's 10 and a half, almost 11. And sometimes like we'll just like kind of get mopey and kind of like, like slightly like pissy, and like
the tweenage
like,
grumps.
Yeah, just kind of like grumpy, and like kind of just like throw a book down too hard and and so when he's in that mode where like just like, ugh, nothing's okay. One of the things that works really well is I will throw ice down his pants.
No way.
Yes. So it started one day where like, I don't know what happened, but I just remember like looking at him and being like, you know what I'm going to do, right? Like you absolutely know what's happening, right? Like I'm walking over to the freezer and I'm going to open it. And do you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to take some ice and I'm going to put it down your pants. Like he thought that was the funniest thing.
I think, all the kids would love that. They always try and do that to me.
So he takes the ice and then like he'll find it and then he'll throw it down my shirt and like down my pants, and we just keep passing it back and forth, and this becomes this like giant wrestle to the floor, and it always lifts his mood. And it's just a really fun way for us to connect.
Does he retaliate? Have you had ice down your pants?
Oh, yeah. No, that's part of the game. Like, I do it to him, he does it to me, and we just keep going back and forth until it's melted.
Nice. That is a good go-to, actually.
Yeah, it's really fun. I mean, not all kids will like that one, but for the ones who will, it's a really good one. Yeah.
So when's a good, like, is there a good time versus a not good time for vigorous snuggle?
I think, again, anytime you sense a child like veering off track, like you hear that whining, you start to see like sibling rivalry kicking up, aggression, right? Play listening can work with that, like those first upticks of aggression, not like, serious aggression, right? Where you've got to really come in and set a limit. But, those first upticks of like, again, like my son throwing down that book, right? Which could easily become like him punching his brother if I don't step in. Do you know what I mean? So those early warning signs, I find.
That's interesting you say that, because my son can get aggressive, but he gets there very fast. So sometimes we'll be even, he'll be on my lap, we'll be having like a cuddle, and he'll kind of bop me on the nose. And I've tried it then a few times, I'll take his little fingers and say, oh, these fingers, they might need some extra loving. They're being a bit heavy at the moment, hitting me. But that is too much for him. I don't know why that is. Like, maybe it's too much closeness, or I don't know, but he tends to then he will lash out. So I've had to be quite careful, when I do it. And sometimes I find it a good way to connect, like after a big outburst, if he's got a bit lost in there, coming back out of it almost. By the time he's ready to be scooped and have some kind of physical contact and a bit of laughter, is also the moment, he's just moving out of a big kind of upset or tantrum.
Yeah.
It must be different sometimes for different people, I guess. Different kids receive it differently.
I mean, I think it actually, that makes a lot of sense to me in that, always with play listening, what we find is like you offer play. And I find it works like, I don't know, 60, 70% of the time, a child will want play just to reconnect. But there's like a good percentage of the time where, and for you, it may be higher in that moment when he's giving you that signal, right? But that, when a child refuses that play, it's usually because they want to stay listen. They want that
they need
kind
to
of
cry.
Release. Yeah. And then after on the other end, to use the play listening works really well, whether it's vigorous snuggle or a play listener, so that makes a lot of sense, actually, with what you're saying.
You did call it counterintuitive. And I mean, I do think it does feel quite strange, doesn't it? Is there any way to kind of quell that feeling for yourself?
Well, it's such a good question. Thank you for asking that, because I think one of the most important things to understand is just if we can go back to sort of a little bit of the basic brain science of like, we've got our brainstem keeping us alive and functioning for us, like, keeping our heart going and our lungs and, dividing your kidney cell, right? And then you've got, your limbic system, which is really primarily concerned with like safety and not safety, right? Am I safe in this moment? Am I not? Does this feel good? And is this positive for me, for my survival? Or does this feel, threatening, right? And then we've got our prefrontal cortex, which is, all of that good thinking, rational, flexible, back and forth, give and take, intellectual, artistic capabilities, communication, all of that. And so when a child is going off track, it's like they're sort of retreating into that limbic system, right? It's like they're starting to get into that place where they're more in that survival mode,
right.
And things are becoming more of a fight. And so when we play and meet that with, instead of meeting it with aggression ourselves or tamping it down or disapproval, when we meet that retreat into the limbic system with play, what we're doing is we're creating safety, which allows their prefrontal cortex to kind of come back online, so to speak. And so when you can think of it from that perspective, for me, it's always really helpful, because sometimes I'm like, I do not want to play about this. But I always realize like, it's more expedient at the end of the day. And it kind of brings up that question of like, first of all, if I can help my child create safety, if I can help create safety so that my child can then have their own thinking brain on, that's always better than me forcing my thinking brain on them, right? Because that just never really works. And so if I can engage their own thinking brain, their own flexible brain, that's always to my advantage and to theirs. Not to mention it's sort of giving their brain a good workout to develop those skills. And that's where you start getting like resilience and grit and all that stuff, right? But also from that perspective, if a child is able to laugh and play, it's almost like a biofeedback mechanism where like their body's laughing and playing. And when we hear ourselves laughing and playing, it almost like sends a signal to our brain that like, oh, life must be good. Like if I'm happy and I'm laughing and I'm playing, I guess I'm not under threat, So it's almost like this spiral of sort of uphill, and we're all familiar with the downhill spiral too, right?
Yeah. Yeah, you don't hear so much about the upward spiral, but what a gift, right, to have.
Yeah. And again,
I think that's why it does work so well, when a kid's starting to act aggressive. It's a really clear signal, isn't it, that I'm in fight or flight, or, I don't know what to do right now, and I'm not really in control. And this kind of physical response reaches them somewhere reason doesn't.
Yes, and when we meet their feeling of fear and aggression with our own fear and aggression, even if it's like, I'm afraid you don't know how to act, or I'm going to have to control you because you can't control yourself, right? When we're so worried about like being right, like what you're doing is wrong and I need you to know that, rather than like choosing connection and compassion and happiness and joy, right? So that they can choose those things, that does help that. But yes, I do think that's why it really does help for kids who are, tipping over into any aggressive feelings, for sure.
Should say to everyone, if you'd like to know more why a vigorous snuggle works so well with kids who are being aggressive, I can put up in our show notes a whole series we've got on aggression in children, which includes the vigorous snuggle and is really a useful resource. So you can look for the show notes at handinhandparenting.org/podcast.
And if you're enjoying our podcast, please do us a favor and subscribe. Also, leave us a review and a rating if you feel so inclined.
This will be the week of ninja parenting.
Yes.
We creep up unsuspectingly on our children and bring giggles.
It's a great little tool to have in your pocket. It's super counterintuitive, but very useful.
It works.
yeah, let us know. We're really curious. If you guys use it, please do write to us. Let us know how it goes. If you have used it, if you like it, if you don't, just let us know. All right. We love to hear from you, and we will see you next week.
I'll see you next week. Bye.
Bye.